Hello, this has been Gravity's Random, and today I've got some books here that have just come in the mail. Actually, it's for some time now. They've arrived in the mail, and I've also got the books I've read in October. But for this segment, I'll be starting off with the books I've read in October. The rest of the books I've read in October. But last week I reviewed Schattenfroh. That was one of the books. But of course, there are other books I've read in October, and I'll be talking about those in a while. But before that, I've got a new bookshelf. It actually arrived before like first week of November, and we had it installed. I replaced the old one that I had in the background there, which is open, and I prefer this one. It's very nifty actually. It's closed and it has a cleaner look, and it goes well with my other shelf, which is also white. And actually, I'm very happy with this, and I've got more book space right now. And I've also got another shelf here in the background. I'll just put up some pictures of both shelves now that we're at it, somewhere around here. And that other shelf, the smaller shelf right there, is where I have my Filipiniana titles. And yeah, the Filipiniana titles are all there, apart from the non-fiction stuff, which I have right over there. Filipiniana that are non-fiction. And the reason I had this kind of arrangement is because I managed to fit everything fiction, creative non-fiction in this side, and that was because my sister actually gave up her old shelf, the smaller shelf, and I figured I could ask her for it, and I got the shelf and I transferred all my Filipiniana on that shelf because it fit perfectly. Well, not perfectly, because there's a box on top of it. The box that has the zines and everything else that is uncategorizable. Yeah. So that's about it for the updates. And now we move on to the discussion proper. So the first book I read in October. Well, Schattenfroh was not that book, but the first book I read in October happened to be Septology by Fosse. And this volume is the 3-in-1 bound edition. Well, originally this book appeared in 3 volumes by I believe it was Fitzcarraldo Editions put out the first English translations of this, or the first editions rather, of these 3 volumes of Jan Fosse's masterpiece, namely The Other Name, I Is Another, and A New Name. While they have been published as 3 standalone volumes, they are to be treated again as one cohesive story. And coincidentally, I managed to finish this in 7 days. And if you've read this book, 7 is quite an important symbol, or an important number, in that this book is highly informed by religious imagery. Specifically, it begins with a cross, a vision of a cross, and ends with a prayer. Every section is that, and it has this sort of timelessness with it. Like, the style is very uniquely Fosse, but this is a book that is very timeless, still relevant, and it has all the existential questions about God and about art. And it reminds me of The Recognitions, another book that I love so much, Recognitions by William Gaddis. So, to read the back: what makes us who we are, and why do we lead one life and not another? Asle, an aging painter and widower who lives alone on the southwest coast of Norway, is reminiscing about his life. His only friends are his neighbor Oslik, a traditional fisherman farmer, and Bayer, a gallerist who lives in the city. There in Bjorgvin lives another Aslo, also a painter but lonely and consumed by alcohol. Aslo and Aslo are doppelgangers, two versions of the same person, two versions of the same life, both grappling with existential questions about death, love, light, shadow, fate, and hopelessness. 3 volumes of Jan Fosse's Septology, The Other Name, I Is Another, and A New Name, are transcendent exploration of the human condition, and a radically other reading experience, incantatory, hypnotic, and utterly unique. So that's the blurb for all 3 of these. Now to talk about the specifics of this book. So from the get-go, the first thing that caught my attention was the stylistic choice, in that Fosse eschews the use of punctuation. Specifically, he does not use a single period throughout this book. Actually, this entire book seems to be one sentence. And I say one sentence quite loosely here, in that this sentence is occasionally broken up into paragraphs to denote passage of time, or perhaps a conversation that's happening. And it kind of reminds me of Thomas Bernhardt, in that I've once read somewhere that like he mostly eschews the use of periods, because the period is reserved only for the likes of God. Like, the period is death. So by the story not having periods, in a sense, I could read that as the character Asla, or still breathing, essentially. So there's that. And again, while that is far from the only thing I found captivating in this book, it is at once magisterial and a very peaceful, very calm book. Like, it recalls mountains, scenery, specifically of the fjords of Norway, because Asle lives in this town called Dilja, and that's where he lives and paints his pictures. And he has this friend called Aslek again, the fisherman, whom he occasionally visits, whom occasionally converses with him. Actually, this novel, while having such vast ambitions, is mostly sparsely populated. You could really feel the isolation, the loneliness of these characters. But Fosse writes them in a way that's compassionate. He doesn't ever put anything. He doesn't shove anything down our throats. But he suggests, he shows the quiet lives, the quiet interior lives of these characters, and what they might, like the thoughts they have, the fears, the expectations they have, the realizations rather that they have about their lives, and so forth. And there's a whole video dedicated to this book that I could recommend, that I couldn't recommend enough, and that is the review by Travel Through Stories, Sean's review of this book, which is very, very helpful, which has been very helpful post-reading of this book. But I've also inferred quite a lot on my own. You don't really need any guides for this, dare I say, but it helps if you're Catholic, or if you have some familiarity with the Catholic faith or Christianity, because again, as I've introduced earlier, this book is wrought with Catholic themes. As I've said, every volume of this book starts with a prayer, starts with an image of a cross, ends with a prayer. So the image in question that haunts the book is an image of a St. Andrew's cross, which is essentially the letter X, but done in a way that's painterly. Because Asla, he painted that St. Andrew's cross he painted that in his studio, and he took a step back and he notices the very unfinished look of that painting. Like, it's essentially one brown and one purple streak that connect in the middle. And he sees this painting and he thinks there's nothing more to add, it's finished, basically. And this painting he keeps for himself. At one point in the story, Aslik, his friend, wanted that painting, but he couldn't give it up. And he is drawn to this painting because of because in his mind he thinks that there's no other, like, his older work or none of his other work could stand up to this unfinished one, because it's the most honest work he's ever done. And Catholicism figures in that way, and that cross is also a metaphor, as Sean quite helpfully described in the video. That cross is actually a symbol of Asla and Asla, their fates barely intersecting for a moment before they drift off into different paths. Like, imagine Paul Auster's 4-3-2-1, but only through the perspective of two people. So that's, in essence, you have Asla, the painter who's got his life figured out, and the other Asla, who is also a painter, but he's lost everything else in his life. He's drowned in alcohol. And there's a sense of physicality in this book as well, in that Asla and Asla, it's not clear, like, the boundary is between Asla and the other Asla is non-existent, in that they each experience the very physicality of memories coursing through them. And that, like, for example, there's a scene earlier in this book in which Asla, I should say the proper, not proper, that's not like the main Asla, from like the main Asla's perspective, when he drives through Dilja, he stops at a park, and in that park he sees a man and a woman, like, horsing around. And it's only in the end where it's revealed that that man and woman is Asla, and that woman is his wife who's passed on. It's not really a spoiler, that part, the part about the wife passing on, because it's introduced early in the book. But yeah, like, Asla and Alice, there we go. Asla had a wife named Alice, who, like, the circumstances behind their meeting are quite weird, but it's quite endearing in that they decided essentially to get hitched early. Just on the first meeting alone, under the pretense of the first meeting alone, they decided, you're the one for me, I'm the one for you, and which is a very endearing thing to and essentially that cross, again, to revisit the idea of the cross, is the meeting point between Asla and the other Asla. And of course there's the question of art, God as art, or art as a way to reach God, and that Asla, the main Asla, figures that with every painting he does, like, every painting he does is an attempt to get closer to the truth, to get closer to God. And he feels that that painting, the St. Andrew's cross, is the ultimate connection to God. Like as I've kept reading through the Septology, I couldn't help but feel that God, like this is the closest I've ever read to, um, this is the closest I've ever felt God, in a sense, this book. And I couldn't deny the power that Fosse's writing has had on me. In that, for a moment, while suspending disbelief, like Fosse has that, he has that tendency to not to suggest but to reassure the reader in that God, while he might not be present most of the time, or while it may be unlikely to feel his presence most of the time, he is there, just not in a way that we're expecting him to be there. So this book. This book is proof of that. And I could ramble on and on about Catholic themes and so forth, but I think I'd best leave this unexplored mostly, because I believe that this is a book that you must read at least once in your life. I think this book I may revisit in the future. I really like this book. Really love it, actually. I think this is a top book this year for sure. And I really can't wait to read more of Jon Fosse's work because of this. This is my first Jon Fosse, which is I wouldn't recommend. But if you want to start with this as your first Fosse, I wouldn't discourage you, because it's also a great work. And it is very experimental as well, but if you could get past the first 60 pages, this book would flow on seamlessly. It will invade your mind the moment you are not picking up its pages. It will consume you the way it consumed me over the past 7 days. And while I'm sure I've missed a lot of things or not, I couldn't help but reflect on this. I couldn't help but stare at the wall after I finished this book and just imagine, or reflect rather, on my life, the course it's taking, my connection with art, and it caused me to just put everything aside and think for a moment, like reflect, be in the moment. So yeah, this has been the Septology by Jon Fosse. And the next book is Naked Masks by Luigi Pirandello, which is 5 plays collected in 1 volume. And those plays are Leola, It Is So, If You Think So, Henry IV, 6 Characters in Search of an Author, and Each in His Own Way. So essentially, these plays all have the same theme in that they explore the conflict between illusion and reality. And Pirandello does this by way of the mask, in which he has these identities in conflict, and by engaging with these identities, we get the sense of reality slowly unfurling, at least until we get to the heart of the matter, which is that there are even more lies and deception underneath the lies and deception already on top of the lies and deception we've already been introduced to. So essentially, there's this identity crisis, or this illusion crisis, in that reality, like, one does not know simply where reality starts and where it ends, or where it begins, or if it even begins or ends at all, because everything goes back to the very essence of what is real, what is not real. And we get that beautifully in 6 Characters in Search of an Author, especially, which is the play I enjoyed most. I'll talk about the other plays in a sec, but for now, let's focus on Six Characters in Search of an Author. So basically, Six Characters in Search of an Author is the most famous play by Pirandello, in that there are these characters who go to a stage director in the middle of planning a play, rehearsing a play rather, that he's already thought of and is currently blocking for, but then there's these characters who interrupt his practice run, and these characters tell him their life story, and the more that the stage director listens to them, the more that he's convinced that his actors could drop the current play that they're working on in order to do their version of the story. But then the conflict arises in that those characters, they want to be the actors themselves, because who better to act out their life stories than they themselves? But then the conflict arises in that what are the actors for then? What are the actors I have there for? Do they not do an equal do you not believe that they could do justice to your life stories? But then they say that who better to act out our life stories better than us? So there's this conflict of reality and illusion happening, in that one part wants the truth, the unadulterated truth, and the other part wants a representation of that truth, rather. And the other plays are also representative of that as well. Like Leola, for example, is a story about Leola, who is a free spirit who has children by different mothers, 3 different mothers, and there's another, and like one moment he also has a meeting with his former lover, a former lover of his, who confides in him that he is the father of an unborn child, and there's this tension in that there's one part who believes that the child is his, but then he also believes that that child could have been from another father. It is So If You Think So is also the same, in that the story talks about some intrigue surrounding this man who is believed by his colleagues to be married, but is actually they actually haven't seen the wife, and they theorize on reasons why his wife isn't usually seen. Like one hypothesis suggests that his wife has been locked in his home, barred from ever visiting her mother, who believes that her daughter is actually dead for a long time, and then the daughter locked in the home is actually not her daughter. It's only an illusion of who her daughter is. And there are many blind sides in that. It's actually revealed that there are many like not blind sides, like many conflicting narratives, in that there's one side who thinks that the daughter is actually alive and that she is her daughter, but then the daughter does not wish to see her mother because she wants her mother to move on. That's one part. And then there's another part that suggests that the mother is only putting on airs, or that the husband is only the mother is only pretending to placate the husband, who believes that his wife, her daughter, has been replaced by another woman, and so on and so forth. So there's this web of intrigue that surrounds the second play. And then Henry IV again is a play about this aristocrat who bumps his head one day while riding on horseback, and he has grand delusions of being Henry IV, this emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. And his wife and other friends dress up as medieval peasants and nobility in order to placate his delusions. Yeah, so that's one. Then the last, Each in His Own Way, is about another play. The second in a trilogy of plays by Pirandello, which is like the trilogy about the theater. So part one of that trilogy, as I've said, is 6 characters, and then the second is Each in His Own Way, and the third play isn't actually collected in here because it's unfortunately not available. The back, like there's a foreword in here that says that the third play, due to limitations in the book space, couldn't be included, so which is unfortunate. But the third play is Tonight We Improvise, and I hope to read that soon. But going back to Each in His Own Way, Each in His Own Way is essentially also about a play. Again, to continue the theme of plays introduced in 6 characters, but the play here is about a different play altogether, and that we see the conflict between the characters, the actors portraying real life people in the play, about a suicide, and the audience reacting to the play. And there again, lots of intrigue that characterizes the earlier plays rather in this collection. But then it's played off as comic as usual with Pirandello. Comic, but then other times serious, like he's really getting into through the veil of illusion reality. And in the end, it gets into this like the end is this sort of Jodorowsky ending, in that, well, like if you've seen The Holy Mountain, in that movie, or if you've seen Monty Python, The Holy Grail, that's one other, in that the ending is cancelled, or like the ending's been revealed to be nothing more than a figment or a play. So the same thing happens here, in that the end, the supposed third act of Each in His Own Way has actually been cancelled because of a ruckus that happened between the actors, and then like conflict between the audience. So yeah, actually it actually more resembles Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the ending, in that it's cancelled basically. And this collection is very ahead of its time, because this collection came out in, well, the plays themselves came out in the 30s, sometime in the 20s and the 30s, but they've been collected as this book from the 50s. But for the time, Pirandello is very ahead of his time actually, and to have read this after some time has passed, I couldn't be more glad to pick this up after some time, because this book has been sitting on my shelf for God knows how long, and I've decided to pick it up sometime the same week as Nobel Prize week rolled around, and yeah, I finished this book as a result. Actually, a day after Krasnorka was announced the Nobel laureate. So yeah, there's a theme going on in this stack, in that Fosse and Pirandello are laureates, and we'll see more Nobel laureates down the line. But yeah, that was Naked Masks again by Pirandello. And the third book I read is Schattenfroh, again by Michael Lentz, translated from the German by Max Lawton. And I won't dwell too much on this because I've already made a review about it, which I will link in the description down below, or include in a time card in this section, right hand corner right here. But again, just to gloss over this, it's basically a monologue by a guy who's been trapped in a dark prison cell with a device on his head that records his every waking thought, his every nightmare, his every bodily action, his very essence, so to speak, a psychogeography of the self. Or as I've mentioned in the video, a psychogeography of grief, because this book is an examination of grief at its basis, most profound, most unadulterated form. And it's a grief it's that sense of grief which justifies the byline here, a requiem, because this is a book about his father, Michael Lentz's father. This is a requiem to Michael Lentz's father, and which is very apt considering I've also looked at some of Lentz's earlier works, and I've learned of Mother Dying, which is I think just been recently released as a small, like, it's a novella I think it's his first work of fiction, also experimental, but it's grief distilled in another form, but through the novella. I'm not sure how it was written, but it's grief, but through the perspective of him grieving for his mother, whereas this is about the father. So there's a through line of grief running through Lentz's works that I'm only slowly coming to realize as time goes on, and I really can't wait to read more from Lentz. I mean, considering this was the first book to ever appear in English from Lentz, is a very exciting proposition. It's a very exciting proposition in itself, and see that he is slowly being translated into English. Like, there's another one, again, as I mentioned, Mother Dying is another one of his works that is out currently, which I also want to get soon, probably next year. So yeah, can't wait to read more Lentz, because this has been quite a treat. Schattenfroh, M.K. Lentz, translated from the German by Max Lawton. And alongside Schattenfroh, I actually read A Day of Pleasure by Isaac Bashevis Singer, another laureate, another Nobel laureate, again, as I've hinted at in this video. This is a series of non-fiction pieces that have the feel of short stories. So going into this, I expected it to be kind of autofiction or kind of short story like, but then it ended up being a collection of non-fiction for children, or should I say non-fiction about his time growing up in Radzymin, Poland, before he moved to Krakow. And this book is notable in that it charts it charts life in that time for Singer and his family. His father was a rabbi, his mother was an ordinary housewife, and he has an older brother, a younger sister, I think. Yeah, and he was somewhere in the middle, I believe. But this book is very poignant, at the same time very nostalgic. It gave me feelings of nostalgia for a time I never lived in. I actually remembered many, like, this book made me remember the other Holocaust related literature that I consumed as a student back in elementary, back in early high school, right when I was in my non-fiction phase, perhaps. So to give the description in the back, which is a citation from the National Book Award for when this won. At a time when in children's literature the power of the imagination is frequently lost sight of or diluted, it is fortunate that we can honor a great storyteller, Mr. Singer has created out of remembered fragments of his own childhood a place instantly familiar, where life is not neat and orderly, where the adventures of a boy throw into sharp and recognizable focus those resistant elements of the ever-troubled human condition, which is an apt description. And I've written a short review of my thoughts for this book, which is that it is essentially interconnected essays, again, about his childhood, and it is told in a very direct style, again, because this was written for children, but that directness does not dilute the ideas presented here, and that for a children's book this is quite bleak, yet still hopeful in its portrayal or of its descriptions of life in that time, or life for Jews in Poland at that time. Time and again, he also directs his focus on the psychology and circumstances of Jews, specifically conflicts between religion and rational science. That's a major theme in here, because Singer is actually, for his age, quite inquisitive, and he'd always go back to the time when he and his father would talk about the Torah and would talk about other things as to dispel the notion between rationality and the mysticism of the Jewish faith. So there's one particular instance here in which a woman brings a goose over to the parents, Singer's parents. Like, a woman claims that her goose is tainted with the soul of the, tainted with the devil, because every time she slams her goose down on a table, it makes a sound. It makes like a wheezing sound, and the father, Singer's father, the rabbi, suggests that that goose is tainted with the devil, and so orders it to be burnt. But then the mother, Singer's mother, comes to another conclusion, in that maybe she mustn't have removed the windpipes from the geese, and she looks into the geese's looks into the goose and finds the windpipes, remove the windpipes, and then when he orders the woman to try to do something to the geese, it stopped making the wheezing sound. So science won, essentially. And the father was the rabbi. His wife was speechless, or rather could not bring himself to utter anything, because again, rationality. He is speechless in the face of rationality. And again, there is the notion of tradition versus modernity, in that Singer, he thinks of luxury, he thinks of electric light as a luxury, and tries to justify why, his parents rather think that electric light is a luxury, or that vacations, or all these modern amenities are fads or won't stay, whereas Singer so badly wanted to experience those things for himself. And in the titular essay here, A Day of Pleasure, it actually made quite an impression on me because it's a story about singer coming into possession of a few kopecks, I think, or what was it? Money. Like he came into possession of some money, like quite a lot than usual, because he'd only receive a few coins for candy, but then he came into possession of quite a huge sum for his age. And all throughout the day, he spent that money in such like he squandered that money on candy, or he took the bus. No, not bus. He took a carriage to another place. He lies about ever like visiting family. Like he wants to experience this, like for a moment. That money he comes into possession fuels a hedonistic lifestyle, or rather a day of pleasure, in the sense that for a day coming into possession of that much money, he devolves into this hedonistic series of activities, and by the time he gets home, he's reprimanded by his mother, who wonders where he's been all day. And from that moment on, Singer realizes that that money didn't do him any good at all, and so he issues that feeling again. He issues that feeling in favor of living a more modest life. So yeah, this book, while bleak for a children's book, I could still recommend because it has very important truths to tell, and it's quite insightful. Again, quite insightful look into Jews in Poland during that time before World War II rolled around. So yeah, A Day of Pleasure by Isaac Bashevis Singer. And the penultimate book that I read in October is The Flanders Road by Claude Simon. And let me read the back, because it is impossible, I think, to summarize this book in such coherent terms in a few sentences. So here goes. On a sunny day in May 1940, the French army sent out the cavalry against the invading German army's panzer tanks. Unsurprisingly, the French were routed. 26-year-old Claude Simon was among the French forces. As they retreated, he saw his captain shot off a horse by a German sniper. In this primal scene to which This is the primal scene to which Simon returns repeatedly in his fiction, and nowhere so powerfully as in his most famous novel, The Flanders Road. Here, Simon's own memories overlap with those of his central character, Georges, whose captain, a distant relative, dies a similar death. Georges reviews the circumstances and sense or senselessness of that death, first in the company of a fellow prisoner in a POW camp, and then some years later in the course of an ever more erotically charged visit to the captain's widow, Corinne. As he does, other stories emerge. Corinne's pre-war affair with the jockey Iglesias, the possible suicide of an 18th century ancestor whose grim portrait loomed large in George's childhood home, George's learned father, whose books are no help against barbarism. The great question throughout, the question that must be urgently asked even as it remains unanswerable, is whether fiction can confront and respond to the trauma of history, which is very apt again. If I were to describe this book in as few sentences as possible, it would be like beating a dead horse over and over again. The dead horse in question being the fact of the matter that Georges had witnessed the death of the captain riding on horseback, who shot off his horse, again, as it was mentioned in the summary here. Like, he revisits this over and over again. Not only the captain shot off his horse by the German sniper, but he also revisits the literal dead body of a horse. I'm presuming another dead horse that he encounters while on the battlefield as a prisoner of war. And throughout the book are intermeshed series like these different occurrences of, again, the affair, his father, the relative who may or may not have committed suicide. And Simon juxtaposes all of those events as he is reliving his memory of that one singular incident of the captain being shot off the horse. And it is that incident which fuels this entire book. That incident, one singular incident, the captain shot off his horse, and he beats that incident over and over again. He relives it as he's making love to Corinne. He relives it as he's reflecting on his mother's letter, the beginning. That's the beginning. He reflects on it as he's living his day-to-day life. It is the perfect representation of what like, this book is PTSD in this book may actually convey the feeling of PTSD better than other books on the subject of PTSD, because the way this book is written is very anxiety inducing. Simon, he writes these ultra long sentences, but then these sentences are a part of a movement. He's known for a movement known as Nouveau Roman, or New Novel in French. And the way he writes these Nouveau Romans is that he writes these ultra long sentences, and throughout the sentence he's managed to include, like, for example, he starts a sentence, he drops a parenthesis, and the other half of that parenthesis doesn't appear until maybe a few pages later, because that's when the character Georges trails off into memories of the war, or memories of another equally unrelated thing. And within that parenthesis, within that mega parenthesis, there are other smaller parentheses scattered all throughout as well. And those smaller parentheses could be to clarify a point, or to include another incident, another unrelated incident altogether. And I could recall one instance in which I laughed out loud at this book, and it was only one instance, I think, in which Georges was having a disagreement with another prisoner of war. I think it was Blum. Georges and Blum, they were mates in the POW camp. And the context is about the dead horse. So they have a disagreement about the dead horse, and Georges blurts out at random, yeah, a kilogram of steel is equivalent to a kilogram of feathers. So this book is very ahead of its time in humor wise, because that meme has been floating around for decades now, and to have read it in a book published in the 60s is wild. A kilogram of steel and a kilogram of feathers in this book in the 60s, unbelievable. So that's the only time I laughed throughout this book, because this book is very dark, very hopelessly bleak, but it is still worth visiting for the passages alone. Some passages here caught me by surprise, and that while they may be very ornate, they made me look at life another way. Like, there's one part here that talked about rain falling off, or like rain falling off a roof, and he compared, like Simon compared raindrops falling to horses' hooves reflected on a pool of water. So that was a brilliant passage, and it took me quite a while to get into this book, but the more I read, the less I like the more I read, the more questions I had in my mind, and the more I wanted to I think take two on this book, because this is, for 100 something pages, this is quite dense, surprisingly dense, but I haven't given up on it so easily, because it is a work that warrants your full it's a work that does not make for easy passive reading. It's a work that you really have to pay attention to. I mean, some parts had me scratching my head and making these audible noises, but then I'm still glad I read this book, because I see the vision, I see what Claude Simon is doing, and I think he does it brilliantly. And another thing is that got me thinking is, if Claude Simon was an author influenced by William Faulkner, then I wonder how The Sound and the Fury might read, because I'm guessing the style that Simon goes for here is very much informed by The Sound and the Fury by Faulkner. So I guess I might have to look into The Sound of the Fury next year for another, like, just to see the connections, I think, or the styles, how the styles are mirror each other. So yeah, this has been The Flanders Road by Claude Simon. And might I add that the guy who wrote the introduction to this book, Jerry Carlson, actually planned to make a movie out of this book, which is wild. Again, he had a screenplay and everything, and he worked with Simon for the to bring this to life on the big screen. But then I think it never happened, never materialized. But still, to want to make a movie out of this book is commendable, very commendable. And yeah, I have to mention the translator again of The Flanders Road, the Claude Simon, translator being Richard Howard. And yeah, Richard Howard. And the last book I read for October is Murakami Tea, The T-Shirts I Love, by the one and only Haruki Murakami. And this is a signed version that I have here. Let me show you the page with the sign, the signature. Here we go. This is a signed Murakami. This is the only signed Murakami I have, and I found it on sale on Shopee, which is a shop here in Southeast Asia. I found it on Shopee for quite a steal, so I got it. And essentially, this book is a series of essays by Murakami that first appeared on the Japanese magazine Pop-Eye, which were eventually collated into this book right here, about essentially his t-shirt collection. It's basically a glorified t-shirt catalog with some essays on the side. And yeah, that's all I have to say about it. It didn't wow me very much, but I did read it in one sitting, which says a lot, I think, about Murakami. It's very breezy to get through. I found the t-shirts mildly interesting, but the stories behind the t-shirts were kind of interesting. But I still appreciate this collection. It's far from a masterpiece. It's actually, in terms of Murakami, a very minor Murakami, but I'm still glad to have it in my collection, because I am slowly collecting I've been collecting Murakami since 2020, and to have come across this signed book is very good, very nice feeling. But I would have preferred the American hardcover, but to have the British hardcover is also good, I suppose, just to complete the collection, and it's a signed edition. So yeah, Murakami Tea by Haruki Murakami. And that ends the October reading wrap-up section. Now we get to the books that I have acquired since the books here have been acquired since June. These have been delayed in transit for a few months now. So since I got them since June, and then the most recent ones I've picked up this month, November, early November. So yeah, let me just. Alright, now I have the books lined up here and here. And I'm going to start with the only Filipiniana collection, the only Filipiniana book that I have right now, which is Checkmeta, which is a reader of the works of Cesar Ruiz Aquino. And he is quite critically acclaimed writer in the Philippines, but then mostly known for his poetry. He could be very postmodern as well, very forward thinking, but then he hasn't published much in these last few years. I think the last book he had was a novel called Z for Short, which is a very maximalist novel, part of which is contained in this reader in its earlier form. And this is a book that's come into my radar because I found it on Shopee again. Actually, Facebook first, but then the seller also cross-posted it on Shopee, so I picked it up for a song. And this is also a signed edition. If you could see the signature, I'll show you the signature right here. He actually signed the inside of the cover here. I couldn't quite read the description, but yeah, he signed the inside. I think he says Jolico, poet of cosmic something. Yeah, so this is a reader that essentially collects his poetry and some of his prose and critical essays even. And I can't wait to read this because I've heard a lot of good things about Cesar Aquino. Here's the close-up and the back. Okay. And this is Checkmeta by the Cesar Ruiz Aquino reader. And the next title will be Oreo by Fran Ross, an experimental novel that has come into my attention for years now, and it's basically this is, I think, her only book, and it's languished in obscurity for decades until it was revived sometime in the 21st century. And essentially it is a story about a black girl born to a Jewish father and a black mother, was brought up by her grandparents while her mother tours with a dance troupe. And I've heard this compared to the Odyssey. Like, this is an Odyssey. Like, this is the Odyssey if it were from the perspective of a black woman, basically finding her father. And when I've skimmed this book, I see that it is made up of, it very much falls into the language of postmodernism, and that it is chock full of digressions and playful asides, more of playful asides, because I think I see a letter, a recipe, equations, math equations. Also lists upon lists that remind me of Mulligan's 2. So I'm looking forward to this book, Oreo by Fran. And the next title here is A Cup of Rage by Raduan Nassar, a Brazilian writer. Nassar came into my attention when this was longlisted for the Man Booker International Prize back in 2015. Yeah. This was longlisted for the Man Booker International 2015. And it's notable because, like, another thing that captured my attention is that Nassar, this is just his he's only ever written 2 books in his life, and yet after writing those 2 books, he decided to retire his writing career in favor of a career in agriculture. And the circumstances in which that happened were like wild. Like he's got a promising career in writing, and yet he gave it all up for agriculture. But then another weird thing is that decades after he's written this book and another book called Ancient Tillage, right here, this book right here, Ancient Tillage, he wrote those 2 books, and then decades later he won the Camões Prize, which is Brazil's richest literary prize. Only from the power of 2 books, people. Nassar. Clap. So essentially this book is, let me read the back. A pair of lovers, a young female journalist and an older man who owns an isolated farm in the Brazilian outback, spend the night together. The next day they proceed to destroy each other. Amid vitriolic insults, cruelty, and warring egos, their sexual adventure turns into a savage power game. This intense, erotic cult novel by one of Brazil's most infamous modernist writers explores alienation, the desire to dominate, and the wish to be dominated. So yeah, a very kinky book from that description alone. And it's written in a series of long Bernhardian paragraphs, in that each chapter is a single paragraph. No line breaks, no paragraph breaks, just a single stream of consciousness. Single streams of consciousness. And it is through this vehicle, I suppose, that Nassar wanted to convey his point of sexual power dynamics. But I have yet to make a comment on that until I have finished this very slim book, which is only, I might add, 47 pages. 47 pages. And to have been longlisted for the Man Booker International Prize is insane. So yeah, A Cup of Rage by Raduan Nassar. I also have to add that there's been a review of this book by Better Than Food that you have to check out, which is also incredible. So yeah, again, A Cup of Rage by Raduan Nassar. And next we have a Dalkey Archive edition right here of Unbabbling by Ri Young. Now this is a book that's been closely, well, not closely, rather, like, this is a book that's been in and out of my to buy list for years now, until I finally decided to get around to this. And the circumstances in which I've discovered Ri Young are quite strange, in that at first I thought he was a Korean guy, because Ri Young. I thought it was a pen name for a Korean pen name or something, but then The more I looked into Ri Young, the more I realized no, it's just some random guy. And I was also intrigued in that he has a few titles in under Dolki Archive. This is one of them, on Babbling, and the other one is Margarito the Snowman, I think. And the rest of his books is published on Amazon independently through his press, I think. And this book is essentially, the more I leaf through it, there's this strong, again, postmodern energy surrounding this book. And to read the title in the back. Excuse me. In the tour de force called America, one of the tired, the poor, the huddled masses struggles upward to the penthouse of God. Discovering too late he's taken the elevator marked down. Resurrected from the rubble of dreams as a messiah and accidental revolutionary, his cry for freedom echoes like a broken record as they lower him into the ground. Like a hopelessly lost coal miner, he digs on, deflating the gloom with slapstick, pensive as a clown, gathering strength for the next round. So, yeah. Unbabbling by Ri Young. Not much to say about this as of now, but I trust that it'll be good. And the next is Zorandor by Christine Brooke-Rose, who is an author that has been that I've discovered recently by way of the readers it may concern. Ruben, shout out to Ruben, thank you. Because of you, I've discovered Christine Brooke-Rose, and this book is essentially about two kids who discover a talking asteroid, and they communicate with it through a computer, a supercomputer, and it's sci-fi, of course. This book is sci-fi in its construction and conception, but the way it's told is through Brooke-Rose's characteristic experimental prose, which Ruben gushes about in his video about Christine Brooke-Rose, and I can't wait to see what this is about. Zorandor by Christine Brooke-Rose. And next we have The Stone Door by Leonora Carrington, with an introduction by his son Gabriel Wise Carrington. This is a recent title by NYRB that I think came out just this year, and ever since it's been announced by NYRB, I've been looking forward to getting a copy of this by as soon as possible, because I have The Hearing Trumpet right here, but I haven't read it yet. I have The Hearing Trumpet, but I haven't read it yet. And this book is apparently not been published until after she's let me see. Yeah, actually, it's not been. It's been published like decades after she wrote it, because it was left to languish. Basically, this and The Hearing Trumpet were left to languish and were not published until well after the 70s rolled around. So yeah, it's apparently a very surrealist book, as I'll be reading the back. So The Stone Door is an omen, an incantation, and an adventure story rolled into one. Built in layers like a puzzle box, it is the tale of two people, of love and the zodiac and the Kabbalah, of Transylvania and Mesopotamia converging at the Caucasus, of a mad Hungarian king named Bol's Killery, and of a woman's discovery of an initiatory code that leads to a cyclopean obstacle to love, self, and awareness, to the great stone door of Keshka and beyond. Once a celebration of the union of the surrealist painter Leonora Carrington and her husband, the Hungarian-born photographer Chiki Wise, and an argument for the unification of the male and female as a means of liberating the human race. So, this was, again, as mentioned at the back, written at the end of World War II, but not published until the 70s, 1977 to be exact. And the same thing happened to The Hearing Trumpet. But what's weird is that The Hearing Trumpet was written after this was written, but then it appeared much earlier. So there's this like Richard Brautigan type situation in that he wrote Trout Fishing in America first, and then Big Sur. No, was it Big? Yeah, A Confederate General in Big Sur second. And then what happened was the Confederate General in Big Sur was published first, and then Trout Fishing in America was published second. So there's this same situation going on with Carrington. But yeah, equally as surrealist sounding as The Hearing Trumpet. And I can't wait to get into this next year. As with the other Carrington next year. So that is The Stone Door, again by Leonora Carrington. We are nearing the end, but let's do this. The second book, the next book rather, is The 40 Days of Musadag by Franz Werfel. And this is an older edition I found for cheap. And this edition is crazy. It's crazy expensive for some reason on eBay. But I managed to find it for less than what people have priced it there. Thank you, book sale. And I've heard about this book through Life on Books. Shout out Tony and Andrew, thank you. And this book is essentially a fictionalized retelling of the Armenian genocide and the siege at Musadag. And it is very controversial in that Werfel had actually had to censor himself at times just to get this work published. But then I believe there's a new edition of this out, which includes all the expunged material from the first publication of it, which is good because more people have to learn about the Armenian genocide, because it is in danger of being forgotten, what with all of this stuff going on with the world right now. And the more stuff is going on, the more we forget about atrocities such as the heart and center of this book, which I will be getting to next year probably. So again, this is The 40 Days of Musadag by Franz Werfel. And next we have Shadow Ticket by one of my favorite novelists ever, Thomas Pynchon. So I've got this on pre-order months ago because I was taken aback by the announcement of a new Pynchon novel, which I hadn't expected in my lifetime ever to have witnessed. To have been one of the earliest, like to have ever been to an announcement of a Pynchon novel so early, that early, is a thing I hadn't expected, not on my bingo card this year. But I went ahead and pre-ordered it, and it came, this book came in the mail weeks after it was dropped on publication day, and I'm slowly reading it. This is the book I'm currently reading, actually. I'm slowly working my way through it. I'm almost done. I'll finish this up tomorrow, but I'm slowly savoring the book. And it's got some like, I won't spoil much of the book, or I won't explain what. There are some connections to Against the Day in this book. If you've read Against the Day, let me know what you think of it. And if you've read Shadow Ticket, let me know. Let me know of the connections that you find in Shadow Ticket. But yeah, this and Against the Day are connected via a character here. But I won't mention who. I mean, if you know, you know. But essentially, this book is about this private eye called Hicks McTaggart, and the plot is he has a ticket, which is an order or a job order from his detective agency called Unamalgamated Ops, and he is tasked with retrieving the heiress of a cheese mogul. Yeah, and that ticket or that assignment sends him all the way to Europe in the land of Hungary, and he has these messed up dealings with all sorts of characters, what entertaining, and like it's classic Pynchon antics at work here. Again, it's not really a masterpiece in the way that Gravity's Rainbow is a masterpiece, but it reminds me very much of Inherent Vice, but set in the 1930s, which is a wild ride, and I'm just I'm enjoying this, considering this is the very last book of Pynchon's that I have left to read. His main bibliography. Yeah. So once I am finished with this book, I'll let you know what you think about it in the next wrap up. I won't be reviewing this individually, but expect it to appear in next month's wrap up. So, Shadow Ticket by Thomas Pynchon. Not to be missed. And I have some books here by the Nobel for this year, Nobel laureate for literature, Krasznahorkai. I have two of his books right here. Excuse me. I have Satan Tango, Shatan Tango, and Hirsch 07769. But let's start with Satan Tango first. So, Satan Tango is Satan Tango is the story of this small town in Hungary at the end of communism, and there's this small town whose residents are trapped in this cycle of, should I say, inertia, until such time that Irimiash returns. And to the people of that commune or that village, Irimiash is this savior figure, this Christ, this Messiah type, who promises to the villagers that he's returned to help them make a new commune after the fall of communism. But then what he's really there for is to swindle what it's later been revealed that Irimiash abandons them in that excuse for a commune that he sets out to build, essentially. So I first seen the movie, the 7 hours long movie. I've seen that movie first. I've actually learned of that movie through the YouTube algorithm, I suppose. And at first, that movie intrigued me because of the length. Like, does the movie really have to be 7 hours long? But then after I watched Satan Tango over the course of 3 days, I understood why it had to be 7 hours long. Because no amount of like Bellatar set out to capture, I guess, Krasnoarkai's prose, in that Krasnoarkai's sentences are about as long as Bellatar makes his long takes to be. Like, I heard that Bellatar used about 150 long takes just to film everything, Sit and Tango. And those long takes are about 10 to 15 minutes long each, which is a feat in itself. And I think you'd be able to finish this even before the movie version is ended. So yeah, I haven't read this yet, but I'm really excited, like, to compare the two, the movie and the book, to see how Bellatar has adapted Krasnoarkai's source material and how Krasnoarkai's book would be fluid to images, would like how well, like, the imagined scenes in here would translate to the images on Bellatar's movie. So yeah, and I also got this because it was volume 1 of a unofficial, what Krasnoarkai calls as one book, which is the Apocalypse Quartet. This is book 1 of the Apocalypse Quartet, you should say. So yeah, that's another reason. And I'll leave it at that. But yeah, this is Shot and Tango by Laszlo Krasnoarkai. And another one is Hearst 07769, which has only been released, I believe, let me see, last year. This has been released last year in English, but it's appeared in Hungarian in 2021. So yeah, it's very recent, this book. And it is one sentence long. This book, got to love a book that's one sentence long. And to read the back, the gentle giant Florian Hurst has a problem. Having faithfully attended Herr Kohler's adult education classes in physics, he is convinced that disaster is imminent, and so he embarks upon a one-sided correspondence with Chancellor Angela Merkel to convince her of the dangers of the complete destruction of all physical matter. Florian works for the boss, the head of a local neo-Nazi gang, who has taken him under his wing and gotten him work as a graffiti cleaner in the small eastern German town of Kana. The boss is enraged by a graffiti artist who is defacing the various monuments of Johann Sebastian Bach in Thuringia with wolf emblems. A Bach fanatic and director of an amateur orchestra, the boss is determined to catch the culprit with the help of this gang. Florian has no choice but to join the chase. Havoc ensues when real wolves are sighted in the area. Written in one cascading sentence with the power of atomic particles colliding, Krasnoarkai's novel is a tour de force, a morality play, a blistering satire, and a hilarious and devastating encapsulation of our helplessness at the moral and environmental dilemmas we face today. And I'll leave it at that for now. But I'm very interested to see where this takes me. Hirsch 07769 by Krasnoarkai. That's the Krasnoarkai. Now we are at the home stretch. I only have the last 3 books here. And let me start off with the only William T. Vollman here, called Kissing the Mask. And this is essentially a study on beauty, understatement, and femininity in Japanese no theater. So, from the inside jacket, what is a woman? To what extent is femininity a performance? Writing with the extraordinary awareness and endless curiosity that have defined this entire oeuvre, William T. Vollman takes on an in-depth look into the Japanese craft of no theater, using the medium as a prism to reveal the conception of beauty itself. Sweeping readers from the dressing room of one of Japan's most famous no actors to a transvestite bar in the red light district of Kabukicho, Kissing the Mask explores the enigma surrounding no theater and then the traditions that have made it intrinsic to Japanese culture for centuries. Volman then widens his scope to encompass such modern artists of attraction and loss as Mishima, Kawabata, and even Andrew Wyatt. From Old Norse poetry to Greek cult statues, from Japan's most elite geisha dancers to American makeup artists, from Serbia to India, Volman works to extract the secrets of stage femininity and the mystery of perceived and expressed beauty, including explorations of gender at the transgendered community in Los Angeles and with kabuki female impersonators. And it apparently contains many evocative sketches and photographs by Volman himself, which is always a Volman thing to do. It's just very Volman of him to do. And from the get-go, we see, again, this is a very, I'm guessing, very unusual Volman fashion, very investigative look into the geisha scene or no theater. Of course, no theater isn't the only thing that he's gonna discuss here. I'm very sure, but he's also gonna also gonna include more stuff from other distant cultures just to have a comparison, because he's and he could get away with this because his major was in comparative literature. He got a Summa in comparative literature at Deep Springs College. So I would like to see how he executes this study. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Kissing the Mask by William T. Volman. And the second to the last, both of these books are going to be by one author, by the way. So this is the first book, Primary Colors. The Primary Colors by Alexander Thoreau. And it is essentially a book about blue, yellow, and red, the primary colors. And again, I've mentioned in my last wrap-up video / book haul video that I had the secondary stories, the secondary colors rather. I had that, but then this took a while to get to me, and I finally have it now. And let me bring them to each other's side. Let me show you side by side what those two volumes look like. There. Now we're finally complete. They look very nice together, actually. See? And yeah, of course, nothing much to say about the primary colors other than the fact that I finally have the first volume of it, and I'm intrigued about this volume right here. And this is also notable, I have to mention, this is also notable in that Thoreau actually got into hot water over this book, specifically because apparently it's been claimed that Thoreau might have plagiarized some sections of this book, but then he made a lengthy defense in the San Francisco Chronicle over it. And because he eventually puts it up to bad note taking as the reason, but he didn't intentionally plagiarize, he just was a bad note taker in his defense. So yeah, The Primary Colors by Alexander Thoreau. And last but not the least is one of the crown jewels of my collection. One half of the crown jewel, the other one is on the way, but yeah, this is the first crown jewel, which is Darkenville's Cat. And I am very excited to finally have this. After years of dreaming about it, I finally have it in my hands, this book. And the condition is not too bad as well. It's just that here, let me show you the inside of it. Here you can see Darkenville's Cat. Not too bad condition. The signature of Thoreau is there. Although there's a bit of There's a bit of rubbing on the bottom here. This part especially is kind of deformed, but it's okay. It won't. I mean, it might affect the value of it, but it's not too bad. It's not in too bad shape, the book. And the jacket is kinda. It's decent. I'd just say it's decent. It's not in too terrible shape, but yeah, I like it. Still like it. It presents well. And if we look to page 400, let me see. What page was it? 400 something. Like the page with the black square, just some chandelier-like square. Let me look for it. Sorry. Okay, here we go. Page 483. We could see that it is a black square. So this tells us that this is the edition of Darkenville's Cat. That is the first edition, second state edition. And what's notable is this book, Darkenville's Cat, when Alexander Thoreau received the true first edition of it, one of his complaints was that that page 483, was not a full black page. It was actually checkered mark. Like that page is actually checker marked, and he found issue with that and wanted it corrected in the second state. So what I have now is the second state, and it's got the owner's name in the inside, Makolo. I don't know who that is, but thank you for letting go of your copy, I guess. So yeah, those are the only gripes that I have with this copy, but other than that, it's a very solid reading copy. I plan to read this, but I'm gonna be very careful with handling this so as not to damage it further, because ultimately this is a book I want to see. This is a book I want to preserve for the story contained within it. Not only for the story, but also for everything else. Because apparently this book is one of the most endearing, one of the most infamous. Well, not infamous. It's one of the most highly sought after postmodern works of literature in the past 20th century. And let me read from the inside flap here. Alaric Darkenville is a young professor at a Southern women's college. He falls in love with one of its students, is deserted, and the consequences are almost beyond the telling, but not quite. The novel is an astonishing wire-walking exhibition of wit, knowledge, and linguistic memory. Darkenville's Cat is a novel about love and hate, among other matters. It deals with delicate tensions between life and art, the ideal and the real, God and Satan, and above all, with the crises and conflicts between man and woman, the tragic implications of which reach all the way back to the primal fall. Its chapters embody a multiplicity of narrative forms, including a diary, a formal oration, and so on and so forth. And yeah, it goes on and on. But in a sense, I was drawn to this book because of its narrative, because of its linguistic playfulness. Because I've heard that this book has very many words, very obscure words, which reminds me of James Joyce's tendency to portmanteau. And Thoreau does a lot of that in this book, and it would help if maybe we could get some sort of index of words going for would-be readers of this book, or if anyone would be interested to start an index of obscure words from this book, do let me know. So that, yeah, I mean, or if such an index is already available, do let me know. So yeah, the crown jewel, one of the true crown jewels of my collection, Darkenville's Cat by Alexander Thoreau. And that's about it for this video. Thank you very much for sticking by. Hope you like and subscribe and hit that notification button. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.